Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're hailing from. Welcome to another episode of the Public Sector on Air. Today we're featuring CoreOS scanning with the wonderful Kari Mendez. Kari, please introduce yourself for the world to know who you are and what you're going to be talking about today.
All right. Thank you, Chris. I'm Kari Mendez. I'm a senior principal consultant with Red Hat. I've been with Red Hat for 9 years doing consultancy stuff. Also do a little bit of programming, software engineering, and making the world a better place through OpenShift in general. So that's me.
Nice. I like that. That's the best job description I've heard yet. Making the world a better place with OpenShift. That's what I'm talking about. So yeah, right. Like making the world a better place with OpenShift is hard. And why is that? Well, because there's a lot of moving pieces to Kubernetes in general, and security happened to be by like a order of magnitude the most like sought after thing at KubeCon EU 2020. So
Mhm.
security focused topics were the most talked about, the most like discussed, and most whatever according to CNCF marketing. So it's great that you're on to talk about how we do security bits in CoreOS, which is essentially, the OS that OpenShift sits upon and manages and, kind of coincides with, I think is the best way to
Mhm.
phrase it, right? Like it's not one on top of the other. It's they're kind of blending together, as it were, because
Right.
very, very refined container operating system. So please tell us what you've been working on with all this.
Sure. Sounds fun. So yeah, so like you said, with I guess with the advent of OpenShift 4, a lot of questions were raised on, kind of what is this CoreOS thing? We're kind of used to
Mm-hmm.
RHEL. We know how to scan it. How do we deal with this, right? So yeah, so I've been taking a little bit of a look at sort of initial how we deal with this. So sort of to jump to the punchline, but not really do so. The OpenShift compliance operator is going to solve a lot of those problems. But before we show that and jump into it, I want to
Yeah.
talk about a few other things. So
Yeah.
let's
Let's level set here about what we're
yeah,
talking about. Yeah.
yeah, let's do
Common
that.
language is always good.
Yes, yes. So it's a bit of an agenda. I'll skip that. I'll just let folks see what we do as we do
Yeah.
it. So just a couple of definitions. There's a ton more, but these are some of the key ones that'll probably
Mm,
come up today. So at the front is OpenSCAP. So it's the Open Security Content Automation Protocol. So first off, it's not a protocol. It's more of a sort of an umbrella set of technologies that allow you to do compliance scans, and also vulnerability scanning. Today, we're going to focus more so on the compliance side of things.
right.
Um, yeah, and then sort of related to that, some terms that naturally pop up when we talk about OpenSCAP. So XCCDF is the Extensible Configuration Checklist Description Format. So as the name implies, it's an XML format that allows you to define checklists. And that's pretty
Nice.
much all it does. But it gives you hooks into running the actual checks. So one of those sort of common hook languages that we use is OVAL, Open Vulnerability Assessment Language. Again, another
Hmm.
XML formatted language. And the great thing about these sort of standards that we have here is the traceability. So for instance, you can create a security, basically a security guide, SCAP security guide, SSG. I missed that acronym here. And then from there, you sort of have your high level rules defined there. And then for different standards, they can reference back to the SSG. So what that allows is you might have one rule that you can check for, but that rule is applicable for standard XYZ as well. You have that traceability back. And then
Nice.
there's also this concept of a data stream, which basically bundles up these different things. So that's CCDF, the oval. So rather than having to go out and look for them individually, you just get this sort of one-stop shop with everything you need in it. And then finally on the list, we've got the asset reporting format, or ARF, which is yet another XML format.
Nice. I'm assuming this is the kind of like we're like here's input to output kind of thing. Is that how we're going down this list? Okay, cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So after we do our scans, this is the sort of the language you get. It's a very verbose, non-human readable XML format. with your results. I guess you could read it if you were really a glutton
I
for
mean,
punishment.
yeah, if you're in the if you're into the XML reading business.
Right, right.
Yeah.
But we'll see some ways you can convert that into a nice HTML report
Awesome.
for
Cool.
human consumption there. Mm-hmm. All right, so this first step is a little bit of history, I guess. It's a way of performing these scans manually.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a blog here. Some Kari guy wrote this a while back that describes how to go into CoreOS through OpenShift and perform some scans kind of manually.
Mm-hmm.
So let's give that a try, actually, if we can. So what I've got here is, let's see, here we go. So this is sort of a vanilla OpenShift 4 or 5 cluster. I've done nothing to it.
Right.
And what I'm going to do is basically run through a variety of demos to show different techniques for scanning. So we'll start with the sort of the manual process here. And first thing I'll do, let's go ahead and create just a new project to play in.
And folks, if the font is not readable, please let us know. We can increase font sizes as needed.
Okay. All right, so basically here I'm just listing out all the nodes in our OCP cluster. And sort of the trick for the manual scan is we're going to use the OC debug command. Mm-hmm. What that does is it'll spin up a container. And sort of the other trick here is that you can specify what container you want to use when you spin it up. And then that container is special in that it's going to be running privileged, and it's going to have a mount that points to the node's root file system. So once we have that, we can install some tools and do some scanning. So let's go ahead.
This very much ties into the level up hour where we build these tools containers to do these kinds of things that, like we need to scan a box. We need to, test that, a port's not open kind of thing. Well, just mount this container and you can run all the tooling you want. You don't have to worry about mucking with the file system and installing agents or whatever else you need, right?
Right.
So very similar concept.
Okay, so we're just going to jump into one of these worker nodes here. As you can see, you can root to /host. So that's the mount point where we're going to be able to see our CoreOS file system. And just for fun, let's take a look at the system released to make sure it's what we think it is. Okay, so we see we've got CoreOS 4.5.
Cool.
All right, very cool. So now that we're here, this is where some of this sort of hacking takes place. Not really, but just like to call it hacking.
I mean, you're debugging for security reasons, right? Like,
right.
It's hacking.
So what I'm doing now, so note here, I use update the image to be our UBI7 image. That's a Red Hat Universal Base image. Basically, it's free to use you don't have to have a subscription to use the image, but it's nice and lightweight. It's security posture is well maintained. It's a good one to start with. So what we'll do here is we went ahead and added the repo that has the latest SCAP content on it.
Ooh,
and then we're gonna go ahead and install the open SCAP tools as well. And this is cool because remember, we're just doing this all within our container.
Right. Like this is not happening on a quote real disk on the file system. It's happening in an ephemeral storage area kind of deal.
Right. And so there's actually a error in the blog. I have to see about getting it fixed. It's not really an error. It did work.
I mean, I know the guy that runs the blog.
You might have to do me a solid depending on how this goes today.
Yeah, we'll see.
So it worked. Technically it does work. I'll show the scan that's actually in the blog first, and you'll see what I mean by broken. So the next command is we're actually using the OSCAP root command. So this runs an OpenSCAP scan. It does changes the root directory that's looking at to look at our /host is where we've mounted CoreOS file system. And we're doing an evaluation of a profile. So in this case, we're running a STIG profile, and down here you can see it's a RHEL 8 data source, data stream that we're doing this from. Yeah, so let's give it a try and see what happens.
Yeah.
And the key thing in that command was that it was a rel 8 data
Right.
stream.
Yeah. So
So as you
but
can see, so it's sort of been fixed. That's why it's broken. So it's fixed to a point where the scan basically says, you know what, this is CoreOS. I'm not going to run rel 8 checks against it. So you get a bunch of, not applicables there.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and stop that. All right, and now let's try a slightly different scan. But before we do that, so there's actually a Red Hat CoreOS 4 data stream that we'll be using.
Okay.
And so first thing we'll do, we'll just get some information on what's in that thing. So as you can see, there's some metadata here. So we've got a few different profiles. There's one, the Australian Essential 8, NIST 853, usual suspects there. And one thing I will mention, a lot of this content is sort of in the process of being fleshed out a bit and refined. So there's actually, internally, we're doing a hackathon to get some more content working here.
Yeah.
But it is there initially. All right, so now let's actually run, I'm gonna run the Australian E8 profile just because Australia, right?
Why not? Yeah.
So let's do that. It actually runs a little bit more quickly. So as you can see, we've got passes and fails here.
Okay.
Which is a lot more interesting than not applicables. There's also, so we also saw there's a sort of FSMA moderate scan we could run as well. And let's see.
I imagine that would take significantly longer.
It does. It does. So as you can see on the pod, we've got an HTML report here. So let's go ahead and yank that out. Let's see, I've got a few. Let me get rid of some of these terminals so it's a little easier to see. All right. So what we'll do, let's attempt to copy this report out of that pod. So we can do OC copy. Here's our debug pod. And then report in /report. HTML. Let's just stick it here. Okay. And then let's see what we got here. All right, let me blow this up. I know this is tiny.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so if you're familiar with the sort of the OpenSCAP reports, then you'll be right at home here. But basically, we get a nice summary of our results, what passed, what didn't. And then there's all types of sorting we can do here. So let's say we don't care about the passes and we want to group it by severity. So maybe we only need to resolve the highs. And then what's cool is you can click in here, you get references to where this content came from. You can see the actual script, the remediation script. We'll talk more about this later if you want to fix this automatically. In case of CoreOS, these are implemented as ignition scripts.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so that's all there. And there's this particular identifier you're interested in. Most of these are hyperlinks are active. You can get more info on report there. So that's sort of the manual way of doing things. And then just for fun, while we're in this pod already, let's go ahead and do a vulnerability scan.
Cool. Yeah,
let's do that. So a caveat with this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to download the rel 8 content. Since CoreOS is, it's in the rel 8 family. It's sort of baselined off of rel 8. So I'm going to run this report off of that content. And all I did is I went out and downloaded the latest content because, CVEs come out pretty often.
All the time, yeah. I haven't patched my printer lately, so yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead and run that. Recall this doesn't take too, there we go. All right, so we see a lot of falses. In this case, false is good. And then we can do the same thing, download that report if you want to. May as well just for completeness. What's this one? And the format for this one is going to be slightly different. It's basically just let's copy that. Actually, let's blow that up. So this one is basically a yes, no for each of the CVs in here. And it's all green, which is what we like to see.
That's always encouraging.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
Especially on a fresh 4.5 node, right? Like,
right.
That's very nice to see.
Yes. Okay, so let's jump back. So that's manual compliance. It's sort of a quick and dirty way of doing things. You don't need anything special to do it. Copy reports out of the node. So the big thing that's missing here is remediation. So since we're mounting that pod or that CoreOS file system read only, basically, we can't remediate from there. So you'd have to do some nasty things to get that to work, which I won't talk about. So if only there were a better way.
Halloween's around the corner, though.
Right. a little early.
Yeah. Okay.
So enter the OpenShift compliance operator.
All right.
That's
what I'm talking about.
Now we're cooking here. So I'm going to be showing this again on a 4 or 5 cluster. The compliance operator is coming to OpenShift soon. Probably I'd say at least a Christmas present.
Okay.
When we get it, yeah.
Nice.
And again, it'll be fully supported. It gives you sort of a Kubernetes OpenShift way of doing your compliance. So let's just go ahead and jump into that. So one caveat, since I am running on 4 or 5, I'll be able to show all the good stuff. When it comes to doing the remediation, I'll be able to do those steps. But so this is based off of a later version of the Ignition format.
Okay.
Which is going to be supported in 4.6, not in 4.5 yet. So it'll tell me it's doing the remediation, but it won't be able to handle the later versions of the scripts.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. All right, so let's go ahead.
So this is a future thing, just to let everybody know.
Yes.
And it's a future thing working on the previous version. So there will be some compatibility issues potentially.
Yes.
And also the typical disclaimer that what you see today might not actually end up in production. And, we say Christmas and that's a hope, not a guarantee, that kind of thing,
Exactly. All the caveats.
All the legal stuff I'd have to say. Done. Check that box.
Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and jump in. Let's see, the first thing we'll do is actually, when I said this was a fresh cluster, I was not kidding. So we're going to install the operator.
Oh, okay, cool.
So let's go ahead and pull those steps up, actually. All right. And so this is basically a link to some install steps for the operator, but I'll just run through those. So let's close this. Okay. And so we're actually going to go and clone the compliance operator repo.
Okay.
After we jump out of our pod.
Oh, yeah. Kind of detail.
That would have been cool if I installed the thing from the pod.
Yeah, if Git was there just by chance and all of a sudden and it just works. That'd be wild.
All right, let's jump into the repo. There's a deploy directory.
Nice.
And first thing we're going to do, we're going to create a namespace. So it's just here. That'll be our namespace. Okay, and let's switch to it just to be safe. All right. And then, so the operator is going to be using the operator lifecycle manager, which, as the name implies, manages the entire lifecycle of the operator. So there's a few things we'll have to create to get that working. First of all, we'll need a catalog source, so we can add this to the catalog.
Okay.
And then
I feel like this is all stuff I'm going to be doing tonight on my cluster here in the house.
create an operator group. We'll create a subscription. Okay. And then we can go ahead. This is going to create a few objects for us. So it should create a deployment. We'll just do a watch for that. I'll take a little. There we go. You see that spinning up there. And then once those deployments get cracking, we should see a couple of pods spinning up.
There we go.
There's one there. Okay, it's a compliant offset operator. There are a couple other pods to get spun up as well, but we can get cracking with that one there. Okay, and so the way the operator works is it actually packages up the content within images, container images. And we'll probably get a chance to see how that works exactly. But let's take a look at a rule. Take a little bit for that to get populated. We'll give that a little bit to get populated there.
Yeah, take a sec.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're still getting there. You go. I'll come online here in a second. No worries. Just give it a sec. It is distributed cloud infrastructure, I'm sure, too. Where are you running this?
Yeah, AWS? This is in AWS. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was about to say. Yeah. You really don't know what the response time is until you know what the response time is. There's a question in chat, very basic. I'm trying to find the doc for it, but I just wanted to acknowledge that. Paul, I'm looking for the answer to your question right now. But yeah, it's basically, providing separation of duties. So the OpenShift or Kubernetes engineers aren't necessarily the de facto security team, right? Like how can you divide those roles? So
yes, I'm glad you asked that because everything I'm doing now, I'm cluster admin.
Right.
So this is, a normal user wouldn't be able to do this. And then you could prune that down to a more tailored role as well for your security folks.
Yeah. And scanning pods for vulnerability is just, it's something like, it's one of those things that you can do as a robotic type role or as a person type role. And, however you want to do that is entirely up to you. It's just finding you the right docs, right? I want to set you up for success here.
Yeah. Yep. And then what we'll see with the compliance operator, once it's up and configured, you can basically put like a cron schedule in it to run every so often. So you can just sort of let it do its thing. All right, so these first set of objects here are compliance rules. So let's take a quick look at one of these just for fun. There we go. So I'll sort of let's blow this up a little bit. Let's just take a look at the bottom. So one thing you'll note is there's a lot of good human readable info in here. So there's a rationale in here, severity level, title as well. And then there's some metadata for the compliance operator, basically tying it back to different objects. And then the next interesting item here is the profile bundle. Let's take this one. So there's two of them here. One thing let me go ahead and explain what the difference is here. So there's one OCP4, one Red Hat CoreOS 4. So Red Hat CoreOS 4 is applicable to the actual nodes that are running CoreOS. And so, and then the OCP4 one is platform level checks. So the reason they're broken out is because to do the platform level checks, you don't necessarily need cluster admin to do that. So the platform level checks would be inspecting actual Kubernetes and OpenShift objects versus the node level checks, which are actually going into the file system and looking at config files and stuff like that. So that's sort of the distinction here. And let's just open one of these up. Let's look at this one. Oops. Let's put the correct name in there.
That helps.
All right, so this one's a pretty small one as well. But the cool thing here is basically all it does is it points to an image that has your content,
Right.
and then the name of a data source on that image with the content. So just to beat this horse over the head a little more, you can actually, I'm going to use Podman to basically just run this image. So we can jump in and see what's on it. Okay, and so as you can see in the root, we've got a couple of data streams here. And this is a way, for you, it solves a few different issues. For one, by upgrading this container, you can get the latest content that's available. And then also say you're in a disconnected environment, which in public sector, we have a lot of that. You can actually sort of sneaker net this image into the environment and you'll have your content there as well.
Right.
Okay. All right, so that's our profile bundle. And let's see, let's take a look at some of the profiles that you get. So the profiles, these sort of tie back to what we saw during the manual scan, where it can run different profiles. So you can see we've got CIS. So that's CIS profile is the one we're going to be hacking at a bit this week.
Okay.
To get more of that working. And then we've got sort of NIST moderate. E8 is our Australian profile there as well. And then there's different ones, one for OpenShift platform and one for CoreOS proper. All right, so let's take a look at this one here. So this is the platform Australian Essential 8. So this one only has actually 3 rules for it. And these are things that can be checked at the Kubernetes OpenShift level. So we'll be looking at different objects. So for instance, probably shouldn't be running HT password in a secure environment. So it's going to make sure you're not doing that.
Yeah, simple stuff.
Yep. Start simple. All right, and let's see. We took a look at a rule. Let's see. So let's talk about. Actually, let's do a scan. So there are a couple of objects you need to create for a scan. The first of which is. Oops. Let me jump back out. Okay. Okay, so this is, so basically scans are broken up into 2 separate objects. So the first one is basically just a schedule. It's some metadata. And then the next object we see will have the details of what profiles we want to use. So this one's pretty straightforward. This is a schedule we talked about. So this will scan daily at 1 a.m. And then the interesting thing it does is since the scans are pretty huge, so that result format file can be like 20 meg or so. I mean, not huge, but too big for a standard ephemeral volume. So what we do here is we create a PVC so we can store those. And then you can also have a rotation policy. So after 5 scans, it'll start overriding itself.
Nice.
And then a couple of roles. So do you want to scan workers or masters? In this case, both.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, let's take a look at. And then, another thing I want to show real quickly, there's also the OC explain command. So for instance, on a scan settings object, and most of the objects with the compliance operator support this, it'll give you some pretty good documentation on what each of the sections are all about there. And then you can also drill in. So if you want to figure out what's more about scan tolerations, you can get even more information there. I thought this was pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's a nice way of getting documentation on the fly there.
Yeah, that's nifty. I wish all this stuff was around when I was doing security work.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's standardized now at the very least. Where before it was just like scattershot.
Right. You have to
Yeah.
know somebody.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so this is the scan setting binding. So this is it references our previous setting that we created. So it'll be using that schedule and those PVCs for these scans. And then this is the fun part where we can specify some profiles here. So again, we're using the profile for CoreOS E8 and one for OCP there. All right, so let's go ahead and let's create those. What was the other one? This guy. Okay, and now to me, this is cool, but once you create those two, once you create those two objects, it's going to automatically create another object for you, a compliance suite object.
Okay.
So we do that so we can see we've got this compliance suite. So far, results
it's running, but not. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Not quite ready yet, so we can
Right.
go ahead and keep an eye on that one. I should have shown it wasn't there before I created those two objects.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, you're just gonna have to trust that the report's not available and that it wasn't running before.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's not a big leap, but
No.
oh, aggregating.
Aggregating, we're almost there.
Almost done.
There. Okay.
I mean, but this is so much better than what I remember what security was like, which was, somebody would toss a Nessus scan report over the wall to me and I would be like, well, no, wait, these are all good. Here's why. But it was all done in line in the doc kind of thing. And now it's like, okay, here's your report. I'm not compliant.
Right.
But then you can go in and say, okay, well, I want to fix this. This I can't fix. Here's why. I need an exemption kind of thing. So,
exactly.
Yeah, having these tools just out of the box is a game changer for a lot of people, I feel like.
Oh yeah, this is cool stuff. And yeah, we were just talking previously. There are ideas of even getting our clients to do some labs and see this kind of stuff.
Oh yeah,
to get familiar with how it all works. So
yeah, I mean, we definitely need to. There's a paradigm shift happening, right? And the way security is thought about, and cloud native security is a big deal because there's so many facets to it, right? Like I think one of the analysts reported, or somebody reported that one of the security problems with cloud native infrastructure was the complexity of cloud native infrastructure, right? And all the knobs and dials that you do have. When you just look at IAM inside AWS, that's a bear by itself. And now you're talking about RBAC and Kubernetes and RBAC and OpenShift. That's an even bigger bear. And a lot of people don't fully understand RBAC and are still making changes to it, right? So having these tools available to say, hey, you're doing this right, you're doing this maybe in a non-compliant way. Are you trying to adhere to those standards? Yes or no, right? Essential 8, okay, might not be a thing for you, but CIS might be, and I'm glad we're working on that because I feel like CIS has become kind of the de facto, almost ATO, right, for lack of a better term, authorization to operate in almost any data center. So having those standards in place, I feel like are good.
Yeah.
And then just helping people not have to spend hours upon hours troubleshooting stuff and figuring out why something isn't working. Having that out of the box, having remediations is always going to be helpful.
Right.
Good stuff.
Right. Yeah. And definitely a game changer. So we can so we can see that we've completed our scan. We're not compliant, right? which we
Row.
And so the next question, okay, great. So now how do I take a look at the results? So there are a few different ways to do that. I'll probably show a couple of them. So I'm just listed out the persistent volume claims. So there's one per scan, basically.
Okay.
So there's one for the OpenShift platform, and then the CoreOS scans on the masters and the workers are there too.
Awesome.
And then if we were to look at those, the contents of those PVCs, we'd see that ARF file there,
Nice.
all compressed up. So let's see. I can think of 3 different ways to get it. So first way, you can create a temporary pod that sleeps, mounts the persistent volume claims, and then do an OC copy to get those files off of there. And then you convert those files into, say, HTML and view them. So that's an approach.
All right.
Another approach, so the good engineers at Red Hat have created a plugin for OC, the OC compliance plugin.
Nice.
And let's see, I might have a link to that in there. I might have a link to that one. So the OC compliance plugin, this one is this is like alpha, so but feel free to use it. It works pretty well. So I've got it installed. And so that'll be the second approach. We'll try that one. And then there's a third approach, which is something I created, so I make no guarantees that it'll work for you. I'll give you a link as well. But basically, it's what it'll do is it'll spin up an Nginx pod. It'll do the things we just talked about and make those reports available to you on a little UI, right? Just a little easier to handle. Maybe for for demonstration purposes to get buy-in. People like clicky stuff, so you can try that. All right, so let's go with the OC compliance plugin approach first.
Cool.
So let's create a results directory. Oh, I'm actually going to wipe this out so you know I'm not playing games here.
No games played here. Only the real. Let's see.
Okay, and then here's, I'm going to just paste this command. So this is the OC compliance command. So basically, as the name implies, it's going to fetch the raw results from our the scan setting binding that we created earlier. This is the, that's the name. The scan setting binding is a periodic E8, and it's going to stick it in the results directory. So let's do that. And I'll take a little bit.
This is attaching to the PVCs and like pulling the file out. Just it's kind of like doing like an rsync, I guess, right? Like
exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Spinning up a pod, attaching, rsyncing it out, copying it over.
Cool.
Let that do its thing. Okay. Maybe what I'll do is start the other approach at the same time. I'm feeling lucky.
Fancy.
So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to clone my little repo here. I might have to, let's delete that one too. Oh, other one finished. I'm actually going to kick this one off while we talk through the other one too.
Okay, cool.
Oops. Okay. All right, so these are the scan objects. So basically to run this, there's a shell script and you pass it the name of a scan and then a magic ensues. So it'll basically create a deployment. It'll roll out a pod that I've got. The container image for is in Quay, just under my account there. And spin up Nginx. It'll go in, look for reports periodically, uncompressed. Basically, it'll do what I'm about to do right now as a short story. Okay. So let's go to the other approach. So if we go into results, and let's go into CP4 here. So here's our ARF format that's compressed. So
Super
let's,
compressed.
yeah.
bzip2. Dang.
That's all right. That's fine. And then let's see if I have the magic command to convert this to HTML. Let's got
So someone in chat asked, and I've got to ask. In the operator, will all this be automated? I know you mentioned setting up a cron job, but will we be able to view the results and export them from the console or API? And the OC compliance
Yes.
thing is kind of doing that export from the API right now kind of
Right.
deal. But anything for the console folks out there right now? Not
Yeah. Not for the console yet.
not for the console yet. Right.
But I'm glad you asked that because I kind of glossed over something really important that I think will kind of answer that question as well.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so we created the report there, and just for completeness, let's pop it open so we can see the results. Here we go. So this is the platform check. So there are only 3 checks there. They're all failing.
Oh boy.
So we're not hardened at all. So no. But at least we know now. Now we know what.
Now we know. No one's half the battle.
That's right.
So I've been told.
Okay.
So yeah, Daniel, the initial like compliance operator, like you have to remember, like these are like open source upstream projects that we're starting to roll out. The goal is to get feedback as we start building upon these things, right? And then making sure that we have ways for folks to get like updates and the status of new ways of doing compliance and governance testing against our systems. So it's kind of it's like a snowball effect kind of thing. Like you got to get it rolling and then it starts, growing and growing and growing. And then you get to the point where it's like, it's got the momentum to stay up to speed, but you got to start somewhere. Right. And that somewhere is like the pebble at the top of a big hill.
Yeah. So a set of objects I forgot to mention, which are very important. So as you can see here, I'm doing an OC get compliance check results. And then I'm passing a label with the scan name.
Okay.
So in this case, we're checking OCP4E8 one. And here, so here are your results. It's not, it's not a web page, but this is pretty consumable.
But you can, so you can get it right there from the command line.
Yeah.
Done. Okay, cool. Yeah, you don't have to necessarily pop open an HTML report, but that would kind of help you get more context, I feel like.
Right. And you can drill into these objects and get further details as well if you wanted to. Yeah. Okay. And then, so remember down here, I kicked off the moment of truth here. All right, so let's blow that up. All right, so yeah, so as I said, basically this goes in, it looks for the reports, it organizes them a little bit and converts them to HTML. So we did one scan, so that's of course true programmer style, scan 0. And then we can see the 3
the 3
masters in this case.
Yeah, nice.
Yep. And then click on the report, and there we go.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. Okay, 65% there.
Yeah, I can only see this getting better with time, right? Like,
oh yeah,
you install the operator with Operator Hub, you fire off whatever scan you want from the operator install page, and off you go, right? Like, and all the results will be right there in the console, right? Like, I see that on the horizon for sure.
Oh yeah, Yep. And then let's go ahead and so this is the fun part here. So we can go ahead and get, not that this hasn't been fun already, but there's a compliance remediation object. Oh. So for any failures that can be remediated, we will have a series of remediations that we can then apply. So in our
Okay.
scan binding, by default, it's not going to auto apply remediations, but we could toggle that flag if we wanted to, and
Okay.
it'll go ahead and attempt to
So
fix as
scan
much.
and then remediate if it
Right,
knew how. Right. Yeah.
right, right. And then, so each of these remediations basically points to the ignition configuration for fixing that issue. And so let's say we wanted to apply, I'll just pick one at random, this one.
Okay.
I could pick it up, and there is a field called apply. And this is where we get into, it'll mark this as applied, but since I'm in 4 or 5, I'm the correct version of ignition.
Right. Yeah.
Right. But this is how you would apply if you just want to apply one remediation, for instance. Let's look for this guy. Oops. Compliance. Okay. Oh, okay. Here we go. So we can see that he's applied.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. And just to geek out a little more here. So if you're familiar with the machine configs, this is basically how we configure our CoreOS nodes in OpenShift in a nutshell, using ignition scripts. So
Right.
one thing you'll notice is we've got one that's 41 seconds old, which is this new one here. So basically when you do a remediation, you're going to get a new machine config. It's going to have that remediation ignition file in it, and it'll do a rolling restart of all the worker nodes in this case to apply that remediation.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And of course, so there's a couple different ways if you wanted to apply multiple remediations. You could, basically what you have to do is there's a machine config pool, right? So, well, let's say you don't do it first. Let's say I tagged 3 of these that I wanted to apply. It would basically do them one at a time and do a rolling reboot for each one, which is clearly not what we want to do. So what you could do is you can go to the machine config pool, pause it, select the ones you want to update, and then unpause it, and then it'll apply them all at once. Just do one rolling reboot. And then another option is, of course, you can toggle the auto apply remediations field as well, and it'll just go ahead and fix it all for you.
So if your infrastructure was built right and you said, you know, like, is there a way to say like only take down half my nodes at once kind of thing at this point? Or is that a flag too far right now?
That one I am not sure of offhand. That's a good question, though. That's a good question.
Yeah.
But it will roll them. So hopefully you've got at least one of each.
Yeah. So it's not going to like, unless you force it, right? Like do it to all your workers all at once, just for the fun of it.
Right.
Unless you tell it to.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that's configurable. I'm just not sure where it is.
Yeah, I feel like it's somewhere like it's literally probably like in the spec, right? Like you define, you know, number or percentage or down
percentage
or whatever or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably somewhere in there. Yeah, but it's definitely all as code as everything else.
Yeah.
What else you want to show off? Anything fancy and fun? I'm gonna drop a few links in chat here.
Yeah. So I wanted to, just because I can't help myself, I wanted to talk a little about container security.
Okay.
So let's go ahead. We probably have enough time to install the Quay container security operator. So what this does,
10 minutes.
Okay. Let's see how quickly we can do this. All right. So let's see. We can go over into Operator Hub. Okay. Look for Quay container security. There we go. And let's install it. Yeah, so basically what this does is it'll see if you have any container images deployed on OpenShift that happen to come from Quay or a variant of Quay. And so Quay provides Claire for doing container scanning, and it scans for CVEs, basically. And so what it'll do is it'll grab that information, make it available to you. It'll show up in the UI as well, which is pretty cool. All right, so that's installed. So actually what I'm gonna do, let's go ahead and create a new project, image vulnerability project.
Oh boy, I like where this is going.
And then let's go down to, let's see, there should be administration. So now we've got this new image vulnerabilities field here. You can see I'm in that project. There's no vulnerabilities. There's nothing there yet.
There's nothing there yet. Yeah.
But I'm not having that. We got to have vulnerability. So let's go ahead. This is so this slow web server. It's just an image that it's old. It's not been patched or anything. So I suspect it'll have some issues. So let's go ahead and deploy that, and then let's wait here eagerly and see what happens. I might need to refresh. I'm not sure. Oh, I didn't even refresh. There we go.
And it's already scanned and has high vulnerabilities. Holy smokes.
Yeah, I don't play. It's got to be a high vulnerability.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, so that's basically what that gives you. And then you can sort of drill in and see what they are. Yeah, get some more information. And again, that's at the more at the container level,
right? But this allows you to say, right, like, no, you're not going to deploy this to production. It's got a vulnerability in it, right? Like this,
right?
This keeps you from like accidentally downloading the still available copy of Struts 2 that's vulnerable, right? Like this, this is that kind of stuff, right? Like,
right,
yeah,
yeah. So, and I imagine the compliance operator at some point we'll have this same type of tight integration, right?
I only see security tooling becoming tighter integrated in OpenShift, not looser. So as time goes on, I would like to see this more kind of like security tab, right? Like up there with, workloads and everything else, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think I'm going to do one shameless plug.
Okay, go ahead.
Because I know we're super low on time here. So there's sort of been an internal initiative at Red Hat. It's kind of loosely related to, kind of tightly related to security and scanning in general, more on the container level. So we've got sort of an internal organization. We've started a couple of open source projects that allow you to basically use a curated set of images. And there's also a Python library that'll integrate with your CI tool.
Okay.
So it'll basically, we give an opinion of, a good way of doing continuous integration from a security stance. And then using that library, you can get things sort of for free. For instance, you can get the OpenSCAP scanning of your containers in a pipeline, right?
Nice.
From, using UBI-based images. And sort of a side effect of that is we can integrate with your CI tool of choice, right? So for now, we're kind of focused on Jenkins and Tecton, but ultimately, what your traditional Jenkins pipeline would look like, what you would expect. However, sort of the guts of each of your stages, rather than being a mass of gnarly groovy code, right, would basically be a one-liner that calls our framework to do the actual work that you need. So yeah, I think there's a couple links.
So you got the trusted supply chain, the trusted supply chain CLI, which I'm assuming is the Python library bit.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that sounds cool. And like having some kind of guidance to give folks is always helpful, right? Like, because it's one thing to like say it, like, yes, you should shift left. It's another thing to like demonstrate, like, this is what shift left might look like to you,
Right. Yeah, we get it all the time from clients is, either they don't know what they need exactly,
Right.
and we got to
Yeah.
figure it out, or they
Because it
have
is a paradigm
something.
shift. Yeah.
It is,
Yeah.
or they might think they're doing it right, and it's kind of hard to break
Which
the
is, yeah,
news.
what is it? The curse of knowledge or the curse of lack of knowledge?
Right.
Like enough to be dangerous kind of thing. Knowledge is scary sometimes too.
Yeah, yeah. I will say none of my clients have had that problem.
No,
None. I'm just going to put that out
not a single one of yours. I guarantee it.
there.
No, so I
Yeah.
mean, thank you very much, Kari, for joining us today.
Thank
It's
you. Thank
a
you.
very enlightening show in the sense that like the things that are coming down the pipeline are designed to make life easier for folks, right? Like, which is why I love working at Red Hat because, yeah, it might not be 100% perfect right out of the box, but it's going to make life easier, and you can help us by contributing your feedback to it, which is kind of the open source and Red Hat way of doing things, which is pretty
Right.
awesome.
Right.
So yeah, look forward to this in the pending release of, hopefully by Christmas. Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. And yeah, looking forward to seeing the next public sector on air here in a couple weeks. A few weeks, I should say. 2 weeks
Awesome.
to be exact. So yeah, thank you, Kari. Thank you everyone in the audience for your questions today. Really appreciate them. If they want to find out more, there's a ton of links that I dropped in chat. Just go through those. And if you have more questions, feel free to hit me up, Chris Short on Twitter. And I look forward to seeing y'all on air tomorrow. Thank you again, Kari.
Thank you.